Hi everyone, this is Cheryl from the Sewing Basket. We are here for our weekly Wise Guy class. Here in Wisconsin it is a rainy day, so hopefully all of our ladies are at home and able to watch us because nobody wants to go out in the weather that we have today. So what we're going to do for you today is we're going to show you a demonstration on how to do a really simple, but it looks kind of complicated 8-point topper for your table. It's one of the type of projects that you can whip it out pretty fast, but people that don't know how to quilt think that you probably did something way harder than you did. So I'm going to have Elaine tilt the camera down, and we're going to start with our finished sample that we have. So this was one of the first ones we made a few years ago. No, this panel that we use is no longer available. Sorry about that. But there's a lot of panels out there that have that 10-inch square, and what do you do with them? You don't want to always make pillows or little wall hangings. So Elaine came up with this really quick and easy project to do with the 10-inch square. So the first thing she did was she cut 4 squares that are your print. You don't have to use panels. You can also use regular fabric, or you can use a piece block. I'll be showing you some of those things a little bit later on. So you're going to have 4 of your print blocks, and then you're going to need 5 background blocks that are whole, and then you're going to cut 2 more of these the same size, and you're going to be cutting them in half for your triangles. Okay, so this project you need 4 of your prints and 7 of your background squares. Okay, so I'm going to set this aside. So today I was working with this little panel that we have. All right, so we have 4 large squares and 6 little squares on the panel. That's one of the other things, is a lot of times you get a panel and they're not all the same size, and it's hard to figure out what to do with them and how to incorporate them. So for this project we found that the best size, the biggest square you want to work with, is best between 10 and 10.5 inches. Again, you can go bigger or smaller. I'll talk about that in a little bit. But for this project, when I cut my squares out, I wanted to go with that 10-inch square. So what I did was I put my ruler, my 1/4-inch line of my ruler, right along this edge so that I cut a 1/4 inch away, and then I'm going to sew right there. So I'll lose all of my green once I sew it together. Okay, so just working with the large squares, I cut those 4 out. So that gives me 4 of these squares. And at first I had started where I was going to leave a little bit of the blue and then sew it at the green, but I changed my mind. So this last one I didn't cut down so I could show you that. So we're going to pretend it's been cut down. Okay? So now what I want to do is, if you think about a compass, north, south, east, west, I'm going to lay these 4 in those positions. And this is a great pattern to work with directional prints because you're always going to have it pointing in the direction that the person at the table would be sitting at. So nobody's looking upside down at a little print. So I have my 4 prints. Okay. And then I need to take 5 of my background fabric, and I'm just going to place them in. So I'm just creating a really big 9 patch. And again, we're pretending like this one is cut to the right size. Okay. So I would sew this together into my 9 patch. Okay. Then I need to have 2 more squares that are the same size. So all of these squares are the same size, which makes this a really versatile pattern because you can do it with any size square. So I'm going to take 2 more of my background squares and I'm going to cut them in half diagonally so that I get 4 triangles. Oop.
There we go.
Okay, so I have 4 triangles. Okay. And then what I'm going to do after I have my 9 patch sewn together is I'm going to add a triangle on each side. I'm just going to lay this one up here so you can see it. So I'm going to center my triangle with my square, my north, south, east, west squares. There's going to be one up here. So you're going to be creating this 8-pointed table topper. Okay? Up and down and up and down and up and down. All right, so I'm going to take this off and I'm going to grab one that's finished. Okay. And again, this one, we no longer have this panel. This one's from maybe 2 years ago. But here is, I'm going to put it up here. Okay. So here is my 8-pointed star. So again, I had my 9 patch. 1, 2, 3, 1, 2, 3, 1, 2, 3. So there's my 9 patch. And then I added my triangles across the bottom of those prints. Okay. So then the next step you're going to do is to do the finishing part of it. Now, I don't want to bind an 8-point sided table topper. I don't know if any of you do, but I don't want to. So we do kind of a pillowcasing method where you put them right sides together, sew around it, and then pull it out through a hole. So this is going to be my backing. I'll lift it up. Okay. So I picked this little Christmas tree for my back, and I've fused my batting onto the back of my backing. Okay. Whenever I'm pulling something through a hole, I always like to fuse my batting down. Otherwise, as you're pulling it through, it separates and you can never get that batting to lay flat again. Or as you're pulling it, you stretch the batting and then it's kind of wadded up in there. So if you use a fusible batting, fuse it to the back side of your fabric, you're ready to do your pillowcase. Okay, so I'm going to lay this down. This was a 1 3/8 fabric. I'm going to grab my sample. And then we're going to lay our top and right sides together on my backing. So I'm going to scoot it up here. The reason we like to work with that maximum 10-inch square is because it fits on a 1 3/8 of fabric for your back. Okay, this piece right now is about 43 inches point to point. So if I do any bigger than this, my excuse me, my salvage to salvage cut is going to be too small, so I'm going to have to do some piecing of my back. So if you stick within that 10.5, you can get away with 1 piece of fabric. Okay, so I'm just going to center this on here. I'm going to make sure, so my length I have a little bit of extra, but when I go salvage to salvage, I'm right on my edge. Okay. So then what I'm going to do is I'm going to sew all the way around all my different angles, a 1/4 inch seam on one of my sides. Okay, I'm going to sew down here around the corner, leave a hole. I want to start before I get to my next corner, so I want my hole to be on one of my straights. Okay, in one of Elaine's previous posts, she talked about angling that stitch off, so when you go to flip it in and close that hole, it's nice and straight. Okay, so you're going to sew around the whole thing. You're going to leave your hole, angle your corners. Then I'm going to come back and I'm going to trim away all my backing right next to the edge of my topper. And I'm going to pull the whole thing through the hole. Before you do that, you want to make sure that you clip all of these funky little corners. You want to go in and you want to clip up to, but not through, that 1/4 inch stitch. It'll make it lay a lot flatter. If you don't clip there, these corners just kind of want to bunch up on you, okay? So you're going to stitch around it, you're going to leave your hole, you're going to clip at your corners, and then you're going to trim away the rest of your fabric. I had a scissors. What did I do with it? Okay. One little trick I want to show you. If, say, your panel, it's an 11-inch panel or a 12-inch panel, and you really can't cut it down, but you don't want to have to buy another full piece of fabric, you can tell on here that there's a lot of extra fabric around this edge. So once this is, you know where your placement is going to be. Okay, and let's pretend that this fabric was, you know, my point was over. I'm going to move it just a little bit. Okay, so let's say that my point was over my edge by this much. Okay, I don't need to buy a whole big piece of fabric, but I can come over here. I can cut a piece of this off because I know where I'm going to be stitching. Okay. And then I can come and I can just sew this edge onto here. I can sew that on, flip this open, and now it's just going to give me enough extra fabric for that point. So I could do that on all 4 points if I needed to. Okay, it's just doing a little extender because you don't need a ton of fabric. Make sense? So once I got this all trimmed and my corners clipped, I'm going to pull it through that hole. You want to try to leave that hole as big as your hand so you can get your hand all the way to the back corner and pull it out there. You don't want to start here and push and try to get that whole thing. It puts a lot of stress on your hole. So get your hand in there, get your arm all the way to the back corner, grab that corner, and then start pulling it through, and it'll pull through a lot easier. All right? So for a minute, we're going to go back to our panel that we had. Okay. One of the reasons that we like that 10.5 is it fits on the 1.25 yards. But also, if you go much bigger than that, it gets to be almost too big for a lot of tables. That 10 to 10.5 inch square is going to finish to be about a 42-inch circle, which is about the right size for most tables. You really don't want it a whole lot bigger. But we also had these little guys, okay? So when I cut these, I decided to cut them and include a little bit of that extra. So this one, I'm actually going to be able to keep all of my green in there because I can cut whatever size I want. Okay, so I cut these out, and you don't even have to decide before you cut them. You can cut them all out. I measured it. It ended up being like 7 3/8. I think I cut my extra squares at 7.5. You know, I'm willing to fudge that 1/8 of an inch. So these are, we're going to say 7.5, which meant I had to cut these at 7.5, and I had to cut 2 extra ones and cut them in half. Okay. So again, I'm going to lay them out in my, so there was a couple of them that were similar. So there was 6 different patterns or 6 different blocks. I only needed 4, so I took out, there was 3 of them that kind of had them in a hammock, so I took these 2 out. And I'm going to lay out my north, south, east, west blocks. Have it be that my direction is going towards the person that would be sitting at that part of the table. Lay in my other 5 squares. Sew my 9 patch together. And then come back and add my triangles to the center of each block. So this one's going to be a little bit smaller. This one will probably finish to be about 30 inches, or 30, 7, 28, 7 times 4 is 28, right? So it'd be about 30 inches. Okay, so it's just a little bit smaller. Exact same process. All right. So I got some other samples here that we're going to go through quick and just talk about the difference between different options to do with this. All right, so these are just some of them that we've made over the years. So this one, hold it up, okay. So this one is using, I got my little notes here, 10.5-inch squares. This was just yardage off of a bolt. We didn't start with a panel. We just found a pretty fabric and a coordinating fabric. And so at 10.5-inch, my topper finished to 43 inches round. This one is the same, working with that 10.5-inch square, but on this one, Elaine decided after she sewed it all together, she did some embroidery. So for all of you people that do embroidery, you can embroider your block ahead of time and then sew it in. She actually used the embroidery as part of her quilting. Okay, so after she got the whole thing pillowcase turned right side out, forgot to say before, to finish it, we like to sew just a stitch around the outside edge. You can do some real simple quilting, and then she used her embroidery as part of her quilting also. Then we have this one, and I'm going to put that up here quick. Okay. So this one, we cut 9-inch squares, and it finishes to about a 37-inch topper. Why did we pick 9 instead of 10? Because of the fabric we were working with. So with this one, okay, this was a panel, and we didn't necessarily want the border part of it in there. We just wanted to work with the floral. So when we measured from here to here, we had roughly 18 inches. So mathematically, a 9-inch block was going to work better. If we cut a 10-inch block, we wouldn't have had enough for a second one. So we trimmed it down to 18 inches and then cut that 18 in half at 9 and then chopped it up into 9-inch blocks. So it was just basically because of the math that we picked that number. Again, as long as all of our other coordinating fabrics are 9 inches, it'll work. So she used 4 of them in here. She didn't fussy cut, she didn't do anything, she just chopped it up. And then with the remaining 5, she made just some different placemats. This is a square placemat, okay, coordinates. This is a longer placemat. So we just picked some coordinating fabrics and just kind of sewed them together. She had done a talk on placemats a couple weeks ago, so you can refer back to that if you have any questions on placemats. Okay? So again, we're dealing with any size square. They just all have to be the same size. So this one is an 8.5-inch square. It's going to finish to about a 36-inch topper. This one was one of them where we thought, oh, let's quilt it. And then we realized, oh yeah, we have to bind it. You notice there's no binding on here yet because we can't find anybody who wants to do it. Because you have outside corners and inside corners. And it's tougher, so it's just so much easier to pillowcase it. Okay. This is one that's coming up tonight when we do our Christmas live comment sold program. This is one of the new ones that we did for this year. And this is also working with an 8-inch square. Why did I pick 8.5, I believe? I picked 8.5 because these were not panels, it was running yardage. And so I had to just cut up I took a yard of fabric and I just kind of had to Swiss cheese it into my 8.5-inch blocks. I could probably get one more here, and there was another spot I could get one more, maybe down here. You know, I didn't fussy cut. If you notice that this one has the cream all the way around it and not on the edge. You know, this one has the legs of the guy that was above them. Okay, people sometimes focus too much on that perfectly centered fussy cut. It's actually more natural if they're not centered, because usually when you look out a window, not everything you look at is perfectly centered in the window pane. Your eye is used to seeing things off center. So it's okay that they're not centered. All right, so this is going to be one of them tonight that will be available, the kit, and I don't know about yardage, at the Common sold tonight. Kit only. Okay. Oh yeah, that's right.
The simplicity of pillow casing.
Yes. So one thing, people, I forgot to show you this. We talked about taking my backing fabric, ironing the fusible batting to the back of the fabric, and then putting them right sides together. Except that when you fuse the batting to the right side of the fabric, and then you put them together, you end up with the wrong side of your fabric on the back of your quilt. So this was one of Elaine's little, oops, we got to show them that because we don't do it perfect every single time. And you know what? It's okay. It's okay.
Should be face to face. When I did it, it wasn't.
Yep.
So don't look at the back of my runners at my house.
Okay. So one of the other panels that we got new in this year that I think would be beautiful in this project. Get my fuzzies off. So again, this is a brand new one for this year. Okay. So you have 4 or 5 of the little chickadees. So you could do all of the chickadees. You could do all of the deer and the cardinal. So half of them have this piece border, half of them have this kind of delicate little metal look border to them. You could do placemats. You could, one panel would get you 3 different Christmas gifts if you wanted to, because you only need 4 of them for 1, 2, 3. Okay, so it's a pretty economical way to do a really nice gift. One other thing I want to show you is, so for all of these, we always had our print be at the north, south, east, west, and then we filled in our corners, our center, and added our triangle. The other thing you can do is you can place your print fabric in the 5 background spots and have these 4 be your solid fabric. It's a really good technique when you have some spare blocks sitting around that you don't know what to do with. So here, if any of you followed along with our 2020 quilt that we were doing while we were all shut down, these are some of my extra blocks that I had left over from doing that project. And so here's 5 of them that all happen to coordinate kind of with our 4th of July. Okay. These were supposed to be 8.5 inches. I was sewing on 3 different sewing machines throughout the process of doing this project, so they ended up, I squared them all up to 8.25 inches. Does that matter? Nope, because I just had to cut my background pieces and my triangle squares, the squares that cut my triangles, at 8.25. So when I do this layout, I'm going to have my center block and my 4 corners either be a print or be a piece block. And again, then when I lay these in there, these are going to be now, my solid colors are going to be at my north, south, east, west areas. And then my triangles will go, so this triangle is going to be the same color, where on here my triangle always matched up to my print. Now my triangle is going to match up to the same color as my background. Okay. And when it's done, it looks like these little piece guys are just kind of floating out in the corner. So here's one that was finished. We don't have the sample anymore, but I did print out a picture of it. Yep. So it just gives a different look to it because you have those piece blocks that are kind of floating out on the edges of the table. Okay. And then one more thing, again, we can do this with any size square that you want. So here, I have little 5-inch squares. We all have some charm squares laying around, or we got yardage to cut up 4, 5, 6 little squares. Okay, so again, I can put these as my 4 side squares and fill them in with my background. And this is going to create about maybe an 18-inch circle, so it's great for, underneath a flower pot or in the middle of a table for like a trivet. Again, so it's a nice little one. Okay, I could do that, or if I wanted to, I could have these. Let's flop it real quick. I could have these be my corners. And my center, and fill in my background with the red. So it just depends what look you want. A great little tip is if you have it laid out and you're trying to figure out which way you like it, take your camera, take a picture of it, or your cell phone, take a picture, and in the picture it'll kind of get rid of all the little seams and you'll really get the feel for how it's going to look. So you might like that design better.
I had a question. These are 5-inch squares.
Yep, these were little 5-inch squares. I just cut them up because a lot of people have charm squares, or you have a layer cake that you can cut into 5-inch squares if you don't want it so bigger. It doesn't matter what size the blocks are. Just everything has to be the exact same size when you start. All right. Elaine is grabbing something. Yes. So we do have, we wrote up the pattern for this set here that we're going to be doing tonight at the Common Sold program. Again, that's working. This one is written for working with the 8.5-inch square, and it also includes the instructions for the placemats. We do have a little $3 single sheet pattern with just the basic instructions. This is not online. I don't know if it's going to be, but otherwise if it's something that you're looking for, you can just call the shop for it. But it's really a simple little project. It's fun to do. You can make it fairly quickly. It's a great project for a beginner because it really doesn't matter if they kind of mess up their cutting. Just, again, make them all the same size. Doesn't matter what size it is. So we hope you can join us tonight at 6:30 when we do our second live program. Tonight is going to be all about Christmas. It's going to be a lot of our new Christmas projects. Some samples from sale from some of our old Christmas projects, and we're just really looking forward to doing it this time and hopefully no tech issues. We think we got it figured out, so let's hope. Elaine, anything else for tonight?
Nope, I hope to be online about 6:20 and I'll start talking how to register. I'll repeat myself a few times. So even if you come on at 6:30, I'll still talk through it, but if you're nervous and want to get started early, I'll probably be on about 6:20.
All right, that's all we have for right now. We will see you later tonight and have a great afternoon. Bye.
See you later.